What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Bible study. I'm super pumped to have this conversation with you. We are jumping into Daniel 6. It is all about Daniel and the lion's den, a very classic story that many people have heard, and we're going to talk about it today. Before we get into that, let's pray. Father, I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for your word. I pray that we would speak good things about your word. I pray that we would inherit everything that you have for us. I pray that you would give us wisdom. I pray that you would give us authority. I pray that you would allow your presence to fill the room, that as we open your word, as we dissect your word, as we increase our understanding of your word, that you are honored and you are glorified. You are good and holy, and we're so thankful for you. You are so good, Jesus. So in your name I pray. Amen. All right, so let's just jump right into it. Daniel 6 verse 1 says, Darius the Mede decided to divide the kingdom into 120 provinces, and he appointed a high officer to rule over each province. The king also chose Daniel and 2 others as administrators to supervise the high officers and protect the king's interests. Daniel soon proved himself more capable than all the other administrators and high officers. Because of Daniel's great ability, the king made plans to place him over the entire empire. Verse 4 says, Then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs, but they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. In verse 5, it says, So they concluded, Our only chance of finding grounds for accusing Daniel will be in connection with the rules of his religion. Let's stop there. Let's talk about it. So Daniel, I don't know if you've heard the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, 3 Hebrew boys who were thrown in the fire because they did not bow down to the idol that the king had made. And so word got around. These men were thrown into the fire. They were thrown in but did not burn up. They came out of it, did not even smell like smoke. There was not any burns on their body by any means. The people that threw them in, the soldiers that threw them in, burned up and died. But the 3 men in the fire did not, because the Lord was with them. In fact, it says that in the fire they saw another person in the fire, and he looked like a god, as the king had described at that time. And so Daniel was also a Hebrew guy. In fact, those 3 men that I mentioned in the fire and Daniel were moved to this area. They were all 4 Hebrew men. Their names were changed, and I don't remember what their original names are. They're interesting names, and but their names were changed. And so here we have Daniel's story being described. And so Daniel is proving himself to be someone who is honest and trustworthy and faithful, responsible, all these things. And the people don't like it. The other people that were to rule over these provinces, they couldn't stand them. And so now they're trying to find fault with Daniel. Well, they couldn't find any fault in how he governed the empires or the provinces that he ruled over. So they come for his religion. They come for his relationship with Jesus. This is also something that we will most likely experience in life, is that when people can't find a flaw in your character, they're going to come for your relationship with Christ. And what you need to be able to do is what Daniel did, which is to stand your ground, which is to seek the Lord, which is to submit yourselves to him, and he will fight your battles for you. And so we continue on in verses 6 all the way to verse 9. There is those men who have a problem with Daniel go to the king and are like, Look, make a decree, oh holy wise king, that nobody should be worshipped but you. They literally were just like hyping up his ego. They were like, you're the one and only, you the best of the best, like everything about you was great. But what they were trying to do is, because they understood Daniel's devotion to God, is that when they said, make a decree, king, that no one else should be worshipped but you, they knew that Daniel would be caught still remaining devoted to God. And that was their way of getting him out. And so in verse 10 it says, "But when Daniel learned about the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down as usual in his upstairs room with its windows open towards Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his God." Here, so it's one thing to ask the king to do something, but when it's signed, when that law is signed, it is signed, sealed, delivered. You know what I mean? Like, it is stamped. It is going to be put in action. Cannot be revoked. Like, the king has put his signature on it. And so Daniel, not only is this just talk that the king is going to make this decree and write this law, but the law has been signed. Daniel does what he always did. He goes to God. He opens the door. I mean, Daniel ain't even worried like that. Like, he opens the window. I'm sure he's like talking out loud, or at least he's just in the same position where people can see him, and he is doing what he's always done. He has sought the king. He is sitting before his God. And here in verse 11 it says, "Then the officials went together to Daniel's house and found him praying and asking for God's help." Now, I'm sure Daniel, though bold in opening the windows, though bold in being in a posture and position that other people can see him praying to God, even though that decree had just been signed, he was asking the Lord for guidance, for wisdom, for help, for leading, for anything. I mean, he needed to know what God was going to do. And so the people saw him. Those guys are trying to take him out. They go to the king. They're like, "Didn't you say, like, can't nobody be worshipped except you?" King's like, "Yeah, just me. Like, only I can be, like, king type situation." And they're like, "Well, Daniel is out here talking to his God and worshiping his God, but only you're supposed to be worship king. And so I'm going to need for you to do something about that." The king loved Daniel. In fact, he saw how trustworthy he was. He noticed it. I mean, we talked about in the beginning verses that when he chose the two, like, Daniel proved himself to be more capable. And so the king gave him more responsibility. And so when these men are coming to the king saying, "Daniel, the guy you know, the guy you've put over these provinces, has, like, disobeyed your decree." And so the king is hurt by it. But because the law had been signed, the king had to execute what he needed to execute. And so we go on. It says in verse 16, "So at last the king gave orders for Daniel to be arrested and thrown into the den of lions. The king said to him, 'May your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you.'" I mean, the king is crushed. Not my Daniel. I'm about to throw in the lion's den. Like, he about to be ate up. Like, like, the king is probably so distraught. He tried to think of a way to get him out of it. There was no way. And so Daniel had to do the plunge. Okay. He had to go into the lion's den. What the king also mentions here, which I want to talk about, is that he says, "May your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you." The relationship that Daniel has with God is not private. It's very public. People could see on Daniel his relationship and devotion to God. That should be the same for us. People should see on us our devotion and relationship with the king. That is what we are supposed to be about. And so he also says, "May your God." So the king did not believe in God as well, which makes sense because he has this decree that only he is supposed to be praised and worshiped and all of that. And so the lifestyle of Daniel, the dedication he has to God, the devotion he has to the Lord is evident. Even the king knows his devotion, Daniel's devotion to the Lord. It says in verse 17, "A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed the stone with his own royal seal and the seals of his nobles, so that no one could rescue Daniel." Now, when reading this story, you're like, "Oh, snap, Daniel is done." I mean, I don't know if y'all have watched the Nature Channel by any means, but I've watched it with my mother, and I see the lion in the jungle, and baby, whenever it's hungry, whenever it's threatened, it's going after. And so the king's like, "Oh, I mean, the stone has been rolled, the thing has been sealed, like, can't nobody come and rescue you, which means, God bless you. You know what I mean? Like, you're done for. So it says in verse 18, then the king returned to his palace and spent the night fasting. He refused his usual entertainment and couldn't sleep at all that night. Verse 19, very early the next morning, the king got up and hurried out to the lion's den. When he got there, he called out in anguish, Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God, whom you serve so faithfully, able to rescue you from the lions? Verse 21, Daniel answered, long live the king. My God sent his angel to shut the mouth of the lions so that they would not hurt me. For I have been innocent, or have been found innocent in his sight, and I have not wronged you, your majesty. The king was overjoyed and ordered that Daniel be lifted from the den. Not a scratch was found on him, for he had trusted in God. Y'all, what? Like, you can't make this stuff up. This is real life things. I don't have the words. Y'all have the words? Do you have anything to say? If you do, put it in the comments. But my gosh, like, what? I mean, the king couldn't even sleep because he was in deep anguish. The fact that God came through for Daniel in such a mighty and miraculous way changed everything. I know it increased the faith of Daniel that he had in God. I know it changed what people thought and their perspective of God himself, even those that didn't pursue him. I mean, this is a big deal. How many people have you heard when they go to the jungle and they come face to face with a lion that they survive it? Okay, we got bears out here slapping people and injuring them severely or even killing them. We've got animals literally mauling people to death when they get into their territory. Daniel was in the territory of the lions, but what did Jesus do? He shut the mouth of the lions, and not even a scratch was on Daniel. So Daniel out here having like this just like kumbaya with these lions because God stepped in and because Daniel trusted that his God would come through. There's no telling what the conversation between Daniel and God was when he was in his home and the people saw him praying to him. There's no telling what that is. The Bible doesn't talk about it, but God and Daniel were talking. And I don't know what God may have told Daniel, if he told him anything. Maybe he told him, hey, you gonna be all right. Like, they're gonna throw you in there, but you gonna come out of there, like, not even a scratch. Or maybe God didn't say anything about that, but Daniel still trusted God. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, it says then, in verse 24, then the king gave orders to arrest the men who had maliciously accused Daniel. He had them thrown into the lion's den along with their wives and children. Let's pause there before you even finish the second half of 24. This is why it's important on who you let lead you in life. Okay, ladies? Like, if you are going to follow a man, you better make sure he is following the heart of God. Because if he ain't, then that means you, him, and your kids most likely gonna end up in the lion's den. We ain't got time for all of that, all right? So let the Lord lead your man and let your man obey the ways of the Lord so you don't get into the lion's den. Anywho, anyway, the second part of it says the lions leaped on them and tore them apart before they even hit the floor of the den. I mean, baby, I couldn't even splat on the floor before the lion mauled me. What? You better make sure the Lord is leading your man and your man is obeying the Lord, because if not, you're going to end up in the lion's den. I ain't got time for that. Verse 25 says, then King Darius sent this message to the people of every race and nation and language throughout the world. Peace and prosperity to you. I decree that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the God Daniel. For he is the living God, and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Friends, The miracles that God performs on the earth is to deepen our faith as his sons and daughters in him, but is also to change the hearts of those who don't believe in him to believe in him. The King has decreed throughout the world that it is now everybody, okay, y'all ain't about to say a thing against the living God, the one in whom saved and rescued Daniel out of the lion's den. These things don't happen every day. We just saw and read that the people who didn't trust in the Lord were mauled right before they can even hit the floor. Like the lions leaped on them, okay, and took them out. They couldn't even get to the bottom of the pit before dying. But Daniel sat with the lions, communed with the lions, maybe even asked them about their day. I mean, the angel of the Lord came and shut the mouth of the lion. There was not a scratch on Daniel's body. This is the power of our God. And Daniel, I'm sure, his faith, his relationship, his in awness of God was deepened. And so is mine. And I hope yours is as well. When we walk with God, miracles happen, not just for us to deepen our faith in him, but for the unbelievers to become believers in the living God, the one who rescues his people, as it says in Daniel 6. I hope this encouraged you. I hope you will read more of Daniel's story, because there is more to be said. I love you guys so much. I'll see y'all in the next episode. Bye.